The CIA spent approximately $20 million on one cat. Not a program, not research and development, one animal. And 60 years later, we still don't know for certain what happened to it. Two versions exist. In one, widely reported by former CIA officer Victor Marchetti, the cat died shortly after release, hit by a taxi on a DC street, $20 million gone in a moment. In the other, described in 2013 by Robert Wallace, former director of the CIA's Office of Technical Service, the cat lived. The hardware was removed, the cat healed, and it lived out a normal life. The cat's fate remains disputed. Same mission, same $20 million, two endings, one truth, and the only people who know which one is real are still refusing to talk.
The early 1960s. The Soviet embassy on Wisconsin Avenue was a fortress with windows. Human agents? The KGB knew every face within a week. New people stood out like flares. Electronic bugs? The Soviets swept daily with equipment so sensitive it could hear a cockroach breathe. Dead ends, both of them. But look at what the analysts circled. Dozens of strays slipped through embassy fences like ghosts. They lounged on window ledges where diplomats smoked. They wandered through parks where Soviet agents held whispered meetings. And never, not once, did KGB counterintelligence look down. The idea was so obvious it was almost painful. Take a creature evolution spent millions of years perfecting for stealth. Turn it into a listening device.
You can't understand Acoustic Kitty without understanding 1960 fear. This wasn't spy versus spy. This was survival with a timer you couldn't see. The Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world so close to nuclear war that President Kennedy estimated the odds of annihilation at, his exact words, between 1 in 3 and even. 1 in 3 that everything stops. Men went home and looked at their children and wondered if they'd done enough. They needed any advantage, any crack in the wall. If that meant building a cyborg cat, then fine. The project, buried deep inside the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology, was developed over approximately 5 years, though specific approval details remain classified. They weren't building one spy, they were building a platform, a furry, four-legged, purring platform that could go where no human could follow. Two sides, one cat stuck in the middle. On one side, case officers like Victor Marchetti, field men desperate for intelligence, watching the Soviets laugh behind walls they couldn't penetrate. They saw a solution, simple, elegant, sitting on a park bench grooming itself. On the other side, the wizards of Langley, the brilliant, eccentric scientists of the Technical Services Division. They saw a puzzle, complex, beautiful, nearly impossible. Their task? Implant a microphone powerful enough to pick up a whisper from 20 feet, a transmitter small enough to hide inside a cat's skull, an antenna durable enough to work for hours, all inside a 10-pound animal that would continue to act like a normal cat. Over a series of procedures spanning months, they did it. The cat, once a stray scavenging behind DC restaurants, was now a walking piece of Cold War hardware. It had no idea what happened to it, and that was supposed to be the point. First tests, promising. The microphone worked, the transmitter worked, the antenna was invisible, the cat could transmit sound. But here's what the wizards forgot. Cats are not robots. They get bored, distracted, hungry. A whispered conversation about Soviet troop movements, interrupted by stomach growling so loud it drowned out the Russian. A discussion about missile placements, abandoned because a pigeon walked by. A potential intelligence goldmine, lost because the cat decided it was nap time. So the scientists went back to the drawing board, developed a second surgery to address the cat's hunger and distraction issues. After 5 years, after approximately $20 million, they had one. One feline agent, surgically altered multiple times, electronically augmented, instincts partially rewired, ready for its first real-world mission. The cat looked exactly the same. It wasn't. The date? Sometime in the mid-1960s. Most accounts place it around 1966, though the exact day remains unconfirmed. The location? A park outside the Soviet embassy on Wisconsin Avenue. The target? Two men on a bench. CIA intelligence believed they were Soviet agents, meeting in the open because they thought no one could hear. The van was in position. The receiver was live. Handlers opened the door, and Acoustic Kitty, 5 years, $20 million, multiple surgeries, instincts partially rewired, padded out onto the sidewalk. Mission? Cross the street, approach the bench, transmit every word. For a moment, it was perfect. Audio came through clear and strong. Agents barely breathed. The cat took another step, closer to the bench. The two men hadn't noticed, still talking. The cat was 6 feet away. It was working. A taxi rounded the corner. No warning. The driver didn't see the cat. He was lighting a cigarette with one hand. The cat didn't see the taxi. It was watching the men, ears forward. Inside the van, agents' eyes widened in horror. One reached for the door handle. Too late. And then, according to Victor Marchetti's account, the cat never made it. A taxi, a split second, $20 million, gone. But here's where the story splits in two, because the other version says the cat lived. In 2013, Robert Wallace, former director of the CIA's Office of Technical Service, stepped forward with a different ending. The cat was not killed, he said. The project was scrapped for a much more human reason. The cat couldn't be trained. You can rewire instincts, but you can't rewire a cat's nature. The equipment was surgically removed. The cat healed, lived a long, normal life somewhere in suburban Virginia. Two endings, one truth. The declassified memo, officially titled Views on Trained Cats, doesn't mention a taxi. It concludes that while the technology was possible, environmental and security factors made it impractical. The project was officially canceled in 1967. The cat's fate? Still unconfirmed. The truth sits in a file cabinet in Langley, buried in a folder that may never see light. But buried in that same document is a line that changes how you read everything. We satisfied ourselves that the technique is indeed possible. Possible. For all the jokes, for the taxi that may or may not have existed, for the $20 million that definitely did. The scientists proved one thing beyond any doubt. They could build a cyborg cat. The microphones worked. The transmitters worked. The antennas were invisible. The failure was the cat itself. You cannot train instinct out of a living creature. You cannot override millions of years of evolution with a few years of surgery. Acoustic Kitty was a technological success and an operational catastrophe. Some researchers believe the project was more successful than we know, that the taxi story was a cover, a convenient narrative to hide something too strange to admit. The real truth? Still classified. And somewhere in Virginia, if one version is true, a very old cat is still not telling anyone what it heard. In 2001, the CIA declassified the first documents about Acoustic Kitty. The internet did what the internet does, turned it into a joke. $20 million for a cat that got hit by a taxi. Perfect. Except, the documents don't say that. They say the technology worked. They say the concept was possible. They just don't say what happened to the cat. The dream of animal spies didn't die with Acoustic Kitty, it evolved. The Navy kept working with dolphins, trained to find mines, intercept divers, guard harbors. But dolphins choose to cooperate. They're partners, not prisoners. DARPA started exploring robotic insects, dragonflies with cameras, no free will required. Acoustic Kitty taught them something valuable. Nature is harder to hack than any computer. 60 years later, that animal has become something more than a spy. It's a question mark wearing fur, a reminder that the line between brilliant and absurd is thinner than a copper wire. The CIA spent $20 million to turn one cat into a listening device. What they actually built was a legend, a story that won't stop transmitting. And somewhere, if one version is true, a very old cat is still keeping its secrets, purring, waiting, because that's what cats do.